Okay, so can you please tell me about yourself?
Yeah, hi. So this is Ravi, and I have over 5 years of experience as a Java developer, and my expertise mostly lies in the building robust backend application using Java, Spring Boot, and microservices architecture. And I also have worked on MySQL for relational databases management, and I have implemented various REST APIs for the communication between the various services. Then coming to in terms of testing, I have used JUnit and Mockito for deployment and DevOps. Also, I have hands-on experience with CI/CD pipelines using Jenkins and version control system with Git. And apart from that, I also have experience using GPA, Hibernate for object relation mapping, and have worked on integrating third-party services via REST and SOAP APIs as well. And additionally, I have contributed to the performance tuning and scalability of the microservices. And I also have implemented caching strategies, and I have used Docker as well for the containerization. So yeah, and for the my day-to-day work, I follow the agile methodology, and I participate in daily stand-ups, sprint planning, and reviews. I use the tools like something like Jira. So yeah, so these are the my things which I have worked on, and this is about myself.
Okay, okay. Okay, what is the latest Java version you have worked on?
Yeah, I have worked on Java 17.
So what differences you see between Java 8 and 17?
Yeah, in Java 8, we have many functionalities like Lambda expression is there, functional interface is there, stream API option class, and then default and static methods are there, method referencing, datetime API. So all these are the part of Java 8. And Java 17, we have something called sealed classes. So that restricts which classes can extend a class or implement an interface. So that is one, and then we have a record is there. So concise syntax of immutable data classes. So for that we can use the record. Then we have the pattern matching for the instance of has been introduced. So that simplifies the typecasting in conditionals. And then in the switch expression we can use the arrow expression. So that is also there. And also some features like applets and all has been deprecated, so that has been removed completely. So yeah, so these are the changes which has been introduced in Java 17.
Okay, so you have experience on DevOps and cloud, right?
Yes, yeah, I have.
Okay, what is the relationship between Docker and Kubernetes? Do you know?
Yeah, Docker is used to create and run containers. So it packages the app and its dependencies together. And Kubernetes is used to manage and orchestrate those containers. So for scaling, load balancing, and auto healing in production environments. So yeah.
Okay, and how do you build a CI/CD pipeline?
Yeah, CI/CD pipeline that automates the build, test, and deployment process. So I usually define the pipeline using YAML or some scripting. So we use tools like Jenkins, GitLab, GitHub Actions. So the pipeline has stages like build, test, and deploy, and it runs automatically on every code push. So that's how we are using a CI/CD pipeline.
Okay, okay, fine. So, do you work with Jira and Agile methodology? And how do you work?
Yeah, I follow agile methodology, and we have daily stand-ups to discuss progress and bloggers. So we use Jira to manage user stories and splitting the task and managing the sprints, right? So we also have sprint planning, grooming, and retrospective meetings regularly. So that's how we are following the agile methodology.
Okay, okay. And in AWS, what is the AWS Lambda and how is it used?
Yeah, AWS Lambda is a serverless computing service, we can say, and it lets us run the code without managing servers. So it automatically scales and we only pay for what we use. So it's useful for running background tasks, scheduling jobs, or responding to events like file upload or API calls. So yeah, so those are the scenarios when we can go for the AWS Lambda.
Okay, how does memory management done in Java? Can you explain?
Yeah, so basically Java uses automatic memory management. So mainly through the garbage collection. So it handles the memory allocation and it handles the deallocation as well. So in Java, so JVM is splitted into heap memory and stack, method area, meta space, PC registers, and native stack. And coming to garbage collection, so the garbage collector reclaims the memory from the objects which are no longer reachable. So suppose the work of the object is over, then and it is not being referenced by anything, then it in that case it is so basically garbage collection happens for that memory area, and that is basically in the heap memory, and that heap is divided into young generation and old generation. So in a young generation again we have hidden space, so new objects whatever are created they are created here, and then we have survivor spaces there. So whatever the objects they survive, so they are here, and then those objects which even after the garbage collection also they are don't removed they are not removed. So in that case we say that those objects as like old generation, I mean they are kept in old generation and they are said to be the long lived objects. Okay, so here the major garbage collection happens very less often. So yeah, so this is how the garbage collection happens. Yeah.
Okay, can you explain more about heap and stack memory?
Yeah, so the main purpose of heap memory is to store objects and class instances, and in stack memory, like it store method frames and local variables and references. So this is the major difference.
Okay, can you explain with some code snippet and tell me which part is stored where?
So yeah, sure. So for example, let's say we have a class employee, and in that class employee, let's say we have int ID is there, and string name is there. String name equal to Joe. Let's say we are declaring there, and also let's say we have the uh, employee emp equal to new employee we are saying. So now in this employee class, whatever the ID is there, that int ID, so that is stored in the heap memory. So that object. Now, whenever we have this string name equal to Joe, so that is also stored in the heap. But uh, wherever we are saying employee emp equal to new employee, so in that case emp object here we have that reference basically. So that emp reference is stored in the stack memory, and the object will be in the heap memory. Okay, so that's how it is done. So any reference it will go to a stack and actual object will go to the heap memory. So yeah, so that's the main difference between those two.
Okay. Okay, so what errors do we get if the heap memory is full? And also whenever the stack memory is full? Do you know?
Yeah, if heap memory is full, then I think we get out of memory error. And if a stack is full, then a stack overflow error.
Okay, okay. Okay, can you tell me what is the difference between normal interface and the functional interface?
Yeah, normal interface in Java can have multiple abstract methods, and it can also contain default method, static method, constants, and all right. But in functional interface have only one abstract method, means exactly one abstract method. So if it is more than abstract method, one abstract method, then it is not the functional interface. Okay. And also it may contain default or static methods, but only one abstract method will be there. Okay. And then is that is intended for functional programming. So especially whenever we want to use lambda expression or method referencing, so in that case we use functional interface. Also on top of the interface we mention add the rate of functional interface to make sure that the interface is the functional interface. So any rule which is violating a interface to be not a functional interface, in that case, that add rate of functional interface will start showing the compilation error. So yeah, so that's the difference between these two.
Okay, good. Okay, so why default and static methods were introduced in Java 8?
Yeah, so basically, before Java 8, like interface could only have abstract methods. So if we will add a new method to an interface, then all the implementing classes has to implement it. Okay, so basically this may could break the existing code base, right? Now in Java 8 onwards, so it allows interface to have concrete method implementations. Okay, so that can be done, and it helps avoiding and breaking existing code when adding the new method to the interface. Okay, so that's the reason why default was introduced. And this static method is kind of it provide utility, or it is kind of helper methods relevant to the interface. So this method belongs to the interface class, not to its instances. Okay, so for example, whenever we are saying um, any interface, and inside that we can write a static, let's say int add, and we can pass the parameters. So basically as a utility this can be used, so that was the reason why this was introduced.
Okay. Okay, so what is the importance of lambda expression and what is it?
Yeah, lambda expression is a, we can say that short set of or block of code. So it can take the parameters and return the values just like the method, but without needing to give its name or being inside a class. So I mean the unwanted things we just try to remove from there, and we keep only whatever is needed. So in short, so basically we are trying to uh, write the optimized way of code and keep the code concise. So for example, let's say we have uh, uh, usually we have runnable class, right? So runnable r1 equal to new runnable, right? And it has the method run. Okay, so now whenever we want to write it, so we don't have to write the whole of this thing. We can just say runnable uh, r1 equal to, and we can give the lambda operation, like lambda operator, like minus and greater than sign, and we don't have to write this run method here. Okay, so this run is no need to write, and we can simply whatever inside that we can just write the method implementation part. So in short, the lambda was introduced to remove the boilerplate codes, and it is better in readability for functional programming. Also, like because of that purpose only it has been introduced. So yeah, so that's the use of lambda expression.
Okay, so how many functional interfaces you know which are predefined? Can you name the sum of it?
Yeah, there are various functional interfaces, like we have predicate is there, function is there, consumer is there, supplier is there, and why function is there. So yeah, these are the ones.
Okay, so why we are using optional class and what is the use of it?
Yeah, optional is a container object we can say. So this may or may not contain the non-null value. Okay, so it is used to avoid null pointer exception basically, and to write more robust and readable code. Okay, so earlier we there was no way to handle the null pointer exception. So always, I mean, we had to write the additional line of codes like if the object is not null and all. Uh, but now there is no need of it because the container will have that object. So it may be null or it may be not null, but it won't throw the null pointer exception if we don't handle it. So earlier, whenever we did not had this optional at that time, suppose any object is there, then we used to check not null. But now we can directly hold it to optional, and we can just use the various different methods provided by it. So after containing that optional object, we can just say that is present, if present, or else get. So all these are there. So yeah, that's the purpose of optional.
Okay, so do you know method referencing?
Yeah, I know that.
Okay, so how it will work?
Yeah, so basically method reference will be like a shortening of the lambda expression to call a method directly. So that means how it will be like it will pass the method as like arguments, especially when the lambda just calls the existing method. So I mean it does not have to call everything, and just in double columns you can give, and we can name the method name. So that way we can call.
Okay, what is stream API?
Yeah, Stream API was introduced in Java 8, and it is the process of collection of objects in a functional and a declarative way. So suppose we have a stream and we want to manipulate the collection, like any list is there, set is there. So in that case we use the stream method. It is basically the functional and it is lazy. So uh, final execution only happens when the terminal operation is invoked, right? So it has intermediate and terminal operations. So terminal operations like for each and all. So those are terminal operations, and collectors dot collect. So those things are there. Then only the actual invocation happens. Otherwise, it won't be executed. Okay. Yeah. So that's what is the Stream API.
Okay, so as you said, can you name some intermediate operations?
Yeah, intermediate operations are like we have map, then filter is there, sorted is there. So yeah, so all these comes under the intermediate operation.
Okay, okay. Okay, so what is the difference between hash map and concurrent hash map?
Yeah, hash map is not thread safe, and concurrent hash map is thread safe. And it- this hash map is not synchronized, and concurrent hash map it uses like bucket level locking, and then it is like kind of synchronized. So the concurrent hash map, so read and write happens at the same time, it can be done. Performance wise also, like concurrent hash map is high performance and safe under the concurrency, but in hash map it is not that much of faster. Yeah, so this is the difference between these two.
And what is the difference with respect to null keys and values?
Yeah, null keys are allowed in hash map, and null values are also allowed. So there can be one null key and any number of null values in case of hash map. But in concurrent hash map, neither the null key or value, neither of them are allowed.
Okay, what will happen if we modify the values during the iteration in hash map?
Yeah, so in hash map, we should not do that. Basically, it will throw the concurrent modification exception if we are trying to modify during the iteration. So this is like fail fast scenario. So yeah.
Okay, what is the difference between hash map and linked hash map? And also, how do they impact read and write operation in different scenarios?
Yeah, when choosing between hash map and linked hash map, the main difference is how they maintain the order of elements and how the how that affects the performance during the read and write operation. So hash map does not maintain any order of elements, and linked hash map on the other hand, it maintains the insertion order or access order based on the configuration whatever we have done. So in hash map, like it is optimized for fast read and write operations. So especially in case where the order does not matter. So in that case, it is good scenario where the performance is higher priority than ordering. Okay, and in case of linked hash map, so it is useful in the scenario where the predictable iteration order is required. Okay, so for example, such as implementing the caches. Okay, so while slightly slower than the hash map it is, but due to the overhead of the maintaining order, it's still efficient for many and I mean read based applications. So that's the difference between these two. So in very short, like we should use hash map. So it gives best performance, and whenever we need best performance and we do not care about the elements order, so in that case we should use hash map. But linked hash map we can use whenever we want to preserve the insertion order. Okay, so that way, so these are the scenarios when we should use this.
Okay, what is the difference between a static and dynamic binding in Java?
Yeah, so in Java, binding refers to the process of connecting a method call to its definition. So the actual method that will run. So there are two types of binding. So one is the static and another one is the dynamic binding, right? So the static binding happens during the compile time, and it is used for basically method overloading, static method, private methods, final methods, right? So these are resolved by the reference type, not the actual object type. So this is what is a static binding. Dynamic binding happens at the runtime. Okay, so it is used for method overriding. So here the method that gets called in determined based on the actual object type, and it does not determine based on the reference. Okay, so basically this enables the runtime polymorphism. Yeah, so that's the difference between these two.
Suppose I want to overload a static void main method. Can it be overloaded?
Yeah, so yes, it can be. So the main method can be overloaded in Java. So in Java, method overloading means we can define the multiple methods with the same name but different parameters list, right? So since the main is method is like I mean it is kind of any other method, so it can be overloaded with the different parameters. So there is no problem with that. But the thing is that only the exact signature of like this public static void main string array args, so that is only recognized by the JVM as the program's entry point. But after that, overloaded main method can be run whenever we want, but it won't be called automatically. So we will have to call them manually from the main method. So then only it will run.
Okay, so have you used custom sorting in Java? How we do it?
Yeah, we can do it using a comparator or comparable. So these are the two ways.
Okay, can you explain bit more in which scenario we should go for which one?
Yeah, so comparator is basically when we want multiple sorting criteria. So in that case, we go for comparator. Comparable, we go so whenever we want to have a default natural order and there is a single sorting criteria. So at that point of time, we go for comparable. So for example, let's say we have any employee class and it has multiple properties, let's say ID, name, salary and all. And let's say the requirement is like at some point of time we have to sort based on the ID, and some point of time we have to sort maybe based on name, at some point of time we have to sort based on salary. There are more than one different sorting way we want to achieve. So in that case, we will use comparator for that. Okay. Now coming to comparable, suppose we want to always do the default sorting, and that should be natural or using the natural order. So we can go for the comparable interface. Yeah, so that's the main difference between these two.
So can you tell me in which package they are found both?
Yeah, comparator is found into the util package, java.util package, and comparable that is in java.lang package.
Okay. Okay, can you tell me how does Spring Boot auto configuration works internally?
Yeah, Spring Boot auto configuration internally, like it is basically it is done using the at the rate of Spring Boot application. So that is the annotation we use for that. And underlying to that annotation, we have again three different annotations like add rate of configuration, add rate of component scan, and add rate of enable auto configuration. And again this auto configuration uses spring.factories file. So using spring boot internally uses spring.factories from the jars, and it will be loaded from there. And then also add rate of conditional annotations is used. So each auto configuration class uses the conditional annotation to decide when to activate. Okay, so that is also one thing. Then also we have custom beans are there, so that overrides the default auto configuration beans. And we have application of properties or YAML file, so there also we can add the properties. So combining all these, we that is how Spring Boot auto configuration works.
Okay, fine. Okay, can you explain how do you write a complete Spring Boot application from scratch?
Yeah, to build a Spring Boot application from scratch, first of all, we can create the model classes and a repository to interact with the databases. Then we can write the service layer where all the business logic is handled. And after that, I develop the REST controllers which exposes the API. And Spring Boot makes it very easy with the built-in features like auto configuration and embedded servers, so we don't have to externally embed the servers and do the things. So uh, there is no manual setup is required for all that. So this is the like kind of the development part now. uh, but before this we can download the spring.io. From that website we can download the template of this Spring Boot project. So there we can give what all dependencies and all we want, JPA and everything we can give there. And we can download that template, and that in that template we can start working with this whatever I told. So yeah, so that's how we can start from the scratch. Yeah.
Okay, okay, fine. So what is the difference between at the rate of bean and at the rate of component?
At the rate of component is used to mark a class so that Spring automatically picks it up during the component scanning. So it's used on a classes like service and repository and all. And add rate of bean is used when we want to create and return an object manually from the configuration class. So at that time we use add rate of bean. So basically when we use it inside the method in classes marked with add rate of configuration, so then we use add rate of bean. So yeah, this is the difference between these two.
Okay, what is the difference between at the rate of service and repository?
Yeah, add service is used for the service layer classes where we write the business logic, and add repository is used for the data access classes that talks to database. And it also gives some extra benefits like exception translation and all. So both are basically special types of add rate of component, we can say. The top level is add rate of component. Under that we have these service and repositories.
How do you inject dependencies in a controller without using at the rate of auto-wired?
Yeah, so instead of using add rate of auto wad, we can use a constructor injection. So we can just declare the dependency in the constructor and Spring will automatically inject it. So this is the preferred way now because it's cleaner and easier to test. So we can also use a setter injection. So that is another way. So yeah, so these are the two ways we can use to inject instead of using at the rate of auto wide.
What is API gateway and how do you manage multiple APIs through it?
Yeah, API gateway acts as a single entry point for all client requests. So it handles routing, load balancing, security, rate limiting, and various other uh, things it can do. So instead of calling each service directly, the client just calls the gateway, and we can use tools like Spring Cloud Gateway or Joule to implement it. So yeah, so any client call is happening. So instead of calling directly different microservices, so it first of all it comes to single point of contact, which is API gateway. From here, wherever again we have the concept of service discovery. So there we have all the microservices there, they gets registered, and this API gateway, based on the request, it further calls to the service registry, and it gets the dynamic IP addresses generated for each microservices, and from there further it calls to them, and whatever result it will get from there, it will further pass back to the client. So that's how the whole flow goes on.
So how do you centralize dependencies using Spring Cloud?
Yeah, in Spring Cloud, we can use a centralized config server to manage configurations for all microservices. So for dependencies, we use a parent pom file, like Spring Boot starter parent. Okay. So and in dependency management, to keep the various versions consistent across the various modules. So that's what we do for the centralized dependencies.
So what is service discovery and how it works?
Yeah, service discovery means services registered themselves with registry, and other services can discover them at runtime, as I told you. So whenever any client is trying to get some data from the microservices, so it comes to the API gateway first, and from there it comes to the service discovery. Okay, so this is the place where all the services are registered, and basically this helps in dynamic scaling, and it reduces the need for hard coding of URLs. So it's very useful in microservices architecture. So all the URLs are generated dynamically here, and given on request to the API gateway. Yeah.
One more question for Spring Boot. So what is the benefit you see using Spring Boot compared to traditional Spring MVC?
Yeah, Spring Boot removes a lot of boilerplate codes and setups. So it comes with auto configuration and embedded server like Tomcat and all. So there is no XML configuration and starter dependencies. So it also provides actuator for health checks and metrics and all. So those benefits are also there of using Spring Boot. So it speeds up the development and it reduces the configuration efforts. So that's the advantage of using Spring Boot.
Do you know the difference between CRUD repository and JPA repository?
Yeah, CRUD repository provides the basic CRUD operations like save, delete, and find by ID and all. But JPA repository extends it, and it gives extra features like suppose we have to do pagination, sorting, and batch operations. So those things also can be done. So we mostly use JPA repository because it has everything we need. But if we have very simple things to be done, only save, delete, and find by ID things only need to be done. In that case, we can go for the CRUD repository.
So how do you enable second level caching in Java?
Yeah, to enable second level caching, we need to use cache provider like EHCache or Hazelcast. So we configure the provider in our application either via XML or Java config and annotate the entities we want to cache. So this way, like repeated DB calls can be avoided. So that improves the performance. So yeah,
Okay, so in SQL, what database you have worked with?
yeah, I have worked with Oracle and MySQL databases in my project.
Okay, so what is the role of stored procedures and functions in the database?
Yeah, stored procedures are usually used to perform multiple operations like insert, update, and delete. So they are pre-compiled and reduced network traffic. So they are pre-compiled and they reduce the network traffic. So function returns a value and are usually used in select queries. So for example, to calculate the tax or discount inside the query, so we can use functions in that case. So that's the difference between these two.
Fine. So when we should use procedures instead of functions?
So we can use a stored procedure when we need to perform multiple operations or any kind of batch processing. Okay, so in that case we can use the stored procedures, but since they are pre-compiled, so they will give better performance and they will reduce the number of databases hits from the Java code. But if that is not the case, we want every time it to be compiled and work. So in that case, we can go for the functions. Yeah, and functions are best when we need to compute and return value. So we can call them inside SQL queries. So for example, calculating age from the date of birth or checking if a value exists. So in that case, we can use functions.
So what kind of joins do you know?
Yeah, joins I know we have left join, right join, full outer join, self join. Yeah.
So when do you use left join and when do you use right join?
Yeah, left join is used when we want all records from the left table and matching records from the right table. So we can use that. So for example, let's say we want to show all users even if some don't have the departments. So and left one is the users and the right table is the department. So in that case we can use the left join, and right join is kind of opposite. So whenever we get all the records from the right table and matching ones from the left table. So that's the difference between these two.
Okay, okay, fine.